The first frost of winter had barely settled over Pinewood Heights when Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, began her usual rounds of terror. It wasn't enough that she dictated the color of our mailboxes or the exact height of our hedges. This year, her attention had shifted to something far more sinister. I had spent months preparing my property for the harsh winter stockpiling wood, ordering bulk propane, and securing enough heating oil to last until spring. But when I checked my supply one morning, my worst fears were realized. My winter fuel tanks had been vandalized. Someone had punctured the tanks, drained the contents, and left a note pinned to my garage door in that smug, looped handwriting I'd come to despise. "This is for the neighborhood's good. Follow the rules." I didn't need to look twice to know who was responsible. Karen. I seethed as I surveyed the damage. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Karen, who owned 3 heated garages and a greenhouse she insisted was community property, had no concern for the actual welfare of the neighborhood. Her obsession was control, plain and simple. I knew this winter would be a test, a battle of wills, and I was ready. I would not let her antics leave my family in the cold. While others might have called the authorities, I had learned long ago that Pinewood Heights HOA was untouchable, or at least thought it was. Their bylaws, drafted by Karen and her loyal circle, operated medieval code, rigid, punitive, and wholly self-serving. That evening, I made my plan. I had recently upgraded my heating system with an auxiliary valve, a fail-safe for emergencies. It had never been used, and most people didn't even know it existed. But now it became my weapon. If Karen wanted a battle of attrition, I would give her one. Quietly, I installed a lock on the valve, something that would prevent anyone from tampering. If she intended to sabotage my fuel supply again, she would find herself locked out of her own winter comfort. I smiled, imagining her morning routine disrupted, her 3-story mansion freezing while her smug expression turned to shock. The neighborhood would finally see the consequences of unchecked cruelty. Karen did not wait long. The very next day, a bitter wind swept through the streets, carrying the first signs of heavy snow. True to form, she came knocking, clipboard in hand, demanding access to inspect my fuel system. She barked orders about potential violations, the temperature of my tanks, and even cited some obscure regulation about communal heating rights. I met her gaze calmly and, without a word, pointed to the heavy lock securing the valve. Her eyes widened, a rare moment of vulnerability flashing across her face. "This is illegal," she shrieked. "You can't," but I interrupted, my tone quiet but firm. "I can, and I did. The neighborhood is free to check the rest of my property, but this valve stays locked. You tampered with my supply. This is a response." Her shriek escalated into a tirade. But by now, the winter had begun its cruel work. The HOA board members, who usually shadowed Karen like frightened mice, dared not come near. Snow accumulated on driveways, and reports of freezing pipes began circulating in the neighborhood's group chat. I stayed inside, drinking hot coffee and watching the chaos unfold from my living room window. One by one, her precious little rules crumbled under the weight of the very winter she had ignored. Homes without adequate fuel were forced to shut down heating systems. Children bundled in layers of clothing ran shivering to school buses, and Karen's once pristine lawns turned into icy wastelands. By the third day, Karen's fury had reached legendary proportions. She made a spectacle at the neighborhood HOA meeting, waving her arms and demanding that I unlock the valve immediately or face legal action. I let her rage go unchallenged, allowing the silence to speak louder than words. When she called the police, they found themselves entangled in a web of HOA bylaws, contracts, and local property rights. Every attempt to force compliance met with a wall of legal precedent in my favor. Karen had assumed she could bully me into submission, but I had prepared for this, ensuring every action I took was within the boundaries of the law. Meanwhile, the neighborhood suffered, but not indiscriminately. I had made certain my own home was fully insulated, the fuel tanks topped, and the valve fully functional for my family's use. My response was strategic, targeted, and completely reversible. This wasn't about cruelty for its own sake. It was about accountability. Karen had disrupted my life, and now she and her loyalists experienced the reality of untempered winter. Messages began appearing in the local social media feeds, neighbors whispering in private groups, "Why is Karen's house freezing? Did anyone check the HOA rules?" The whispers spread into a quiet panic. By the end of the first week, the HOA board began to fracture. Some members, horrified by the conditions, started advocating for compromise, suggesting meetings and negotiations. Karen, predictably, refused. She doubled down, calling for fines, emergency inspections, and threats of lawsuits. Every attempt backfired as residents quietly realized the irony. Karen had created the winter nightmare, and the community had little sympathy for her complaints. Rumors circulated that she had hired an emergency fuel truck, only to find the roads blocked with snow-relost or neglectful ordinances regarding snow removal. It was on the 10th day that the neighborhood fully realized the scale of her mismanagement. Pipes burst in several homes, and a few residents reluctantly admitted that they had depended entirely on Karen's oversight. The irony was cruel but satisfying. The very people who had followed her rules blindly, she had failed to foresee. Meanwhile, my family thrived. We hosted hot cocoa gatherings in our living room, neighbors slipping in for warmth and laughter, free from Karen's overbearing scrutiny. Word spread quickly about our preparedness, and slowly, neighbors began asking for guidance on how to protect themselves. My property became a hub of practical advice, insulation techniques, and contingency planning lessons Karen had refused to teach. Karen's fury escalated into desperation. She attempted to rally the neighborhood with promises of fines, legal action, and community shaming, but it was too late. Her credibility had evaporated. One by one, her supporters withdrew, realizing that loyalty to Karen came at the expense of comfort, safety, and sanity. The winter deepened, and with it, the humiliation of the HOA's once-iron grip. Local news even caught wind of the situation, covering the story of Pinewood Heights' frozen streets and highlighting the extraordinary measures some residents had taken to survive. Karen's face appeared in photographs, frozen mid-scream in a snowstorm, her expression the perfect symbol of hubris undone. By mid-January, the crisis had reached a resolution, but not through Karen's intervention. Legal mediators were called in, and the HOA was forced to negotiate. The locked valve remained untouched. My family's preparations were praised as model examples of personal responsibility. Karen, isolated and humiliated, finally acquiesced, retreating from public life while the rest of the neighborhood rebuilt their sense of security. Lessons were learned the hard way. Preparation, foresight, and common sense outweighed bureaucratic tyranny. I remember the night we finally lit the fireplace, the warmth spreading through our home as the wind howled outside. Karen's empire of control lay in ruins, and the neighborhood had witnessed the consequences. Obsession. It was more than revenge, was justice, a quiet victory measured not in screams or confrontation, but in the simple, enduring warmth of a family safe in their home, while the world outside learned a harsh lesson. In the weeks that followed, the HOA attempted minor reprisals, sending letters demanding explanations, threatening penalties, and even citing obscure bylaws. Each letter was met with calm, factual responses, citing property rights and safety regulations. Slowly, the tension faded. Pinewood Heights returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of that winter, the winter Karen tried to control and failed, lingered in every home, a cautionary tale of hubris, preparedness, and the consequences of overreaching authority. By the time spring arrived, the snow had melted, and so had Karen's influence. The community quietly celebrated resilience and prudence over power and fear. I remained vigilant, of course, keeping my fuel supplies secure and my valves locked. Karen, once the omnipotent queen of the HOA, now became a cautionary whisper. A story parents told their children about winter, control, and the price of overconfidence. In the end, it wasn't just about fuel, snow, or cold. It was about respect, boundaries, and justice. Karen had learned that you could not destroy the lives of others without consequence. And I had learned that patience, planning, and a locked valve could speak louder than 1,000 HOA rules. The neighborhood survived, and we thrived, warm and unbowed, proving that sometimes the coldest winters reveal the strongest people land the weakest tyrants.